Pirates in the Arctic Ocean never froze to death, yet they wore the same clothes as everyone else. While sailors on merchant ships were losing fingers to frostbite, these outlaws stayed perfectly warm using one bizarre trick that goes against everything you'd expect about surviving freezing waters. Forget everything you thought you knew about pirates and staying warm at sea. While Hollywood shows these rough sailors shivering in their raggedy coats, the real buccaneers had a secret weapon that kept them toasty during those bone-chilling ocean nights. And no, it wasn't just rum, though they certainly didn't skimp on that either. The trick? Heated sea salt packed into small cloth pouches. Sounds ridiculous, right? But hear me out. These weathered seafarers discovered something that would make modern campers jealous. They'd take ordinary sea salt, the stuff that was everywhere on their ships anyway, and heat it up over coals or leave it baking in the hot sun during the day. Once that salt got nice and toasty, they'd wrap it up in whatever fabric they could find. What happened next was pure genius. The salt held onto that heat for hours, sometimes all night long. We're talking about nature's original hand warmers here, folks. Pirates would tuck these heated salt pouches into their clothes, slip them into their bedding, or even pass them around during those brutal midnight watches when the wind felt like it was cutting right through their bones. But here's the brilliant part. This method was completely reusable. Unlike burning precious wood or coal that they needed for cooking, the salt trick required no ongoing fuel. Heat it once during the day, stay warm all night. It was like having a rechargeable battery, except it ran on sunshine and leftover campfire heat. Even better, there was zero fire risk. On wooden ships where one stray spark could turn your floating home into a floating bonfire, avoiding open flames was literally a matter of life and death. The salt pouches were safer than your grandmother's electric blanket. The really fascinating thing is how quiet this trick stayed throughout history. While everyone knows pirates drank rum and sang sea shanties, this salt heat hack rarely made it into the history books. It was one of those practical secrets that got passed down from sailor to sailor, captain to crew, keeping generations of seafarers alive through the worst weather Mother Nature could throw at them. These salt warmers became as essential as their cutlasses and treasure maps. Without them, many of those legendary voyages through icy northern waters might have ended very differently. Of course, staying warm took more than just heated salt pouches. Pirates had to get creative with every aspect of their clothing and survival gear. When the icy winds howled across those wooden decks, smart pirates knew their survival depended on one crucial fabric. Wool, not silk, not cotton, not whatever fancy materials they'd plundered from merchant ships. Just good old-fashioned wool. Here's the thing about wool that made it pure gold to these sea rogues. It kept them warm even when soaking wet. Try that with your cotton t-shirt next time you're caught in the rain. Wool fibers trap tiny pockets of air, creating insulation that works like nature's own heating system. Even drenched in freezing spray, a wool coat still fought off hypothermia. But pirates weren't exactly shopping at the local textile market, were they? They had to get creative. Resourceful crews turned into floating tailors, patching together wool scraps from every captured vessel. One sleeve from a Spanish merchant's coat, another from a British naval officer's uniform. The result? Frankenstein garments that looked ridiculous but worked brilliantly. Smart captains developed a clothing rationing system that would make military quartermasters jealous. When they seized a ship carrying quality woolen goods, distribution followed a strict hierarchy. Officers got first pick, then veteran crew members. Finally, the green sailors. Harsh? Absolutely. Effective? You bet. The layering technique pirates perfected was basically an early version of modern outdoor gear systems. Base layer of whatever fabric they could scrounge, middle layer of wool for insulation, outer layer of oiled canvas or leather to block wind and water. This wasn't fashion. It was survival engineering. Well, here's where things got interesting. Pirates discovered that different wool types offered varying protection levels. Sheep wool was common and decent. But when they got their hands on clothing made from alpaca or even rare vicuña wool, those items became more valuable than some treasure chests. The really clever crews learned to feel their wool garments by repeatedly wetting and drying them. This process made the fibers lock together tighter, creating an almost windproof barrier. Takes patience, but pirates had plenty of that between raids. One fascinating detail from ship logs. Pirates often slept in their wool clothes during particularly brutal cold snaps. Sounds uncomfortable, right? but it kept their garments warm and ready while conserving precious body heat through the night. Then there's the maintenance aspect most people never consider. Salt water wreaked havoc on fabrics, but wool proved surprisingly resilient. A quick rinse in fresh water whenever they made port, and those wool pieces bounced back. But even the best wool clothing had limitations when temperatures really plummeted. That's when pirates had to get seriously creative with their heat sources. When you're stuck on a freezing ship with nothing but wooden planks between you and the icy ocean, you get creative fast. Pirates figured out something brilliant that would make today's camping enthusiasts jealous. They took ordinary metal pots and filled them with burning coals. Boom, instant portable heater. These weren't fancy contraptions either. Any decent-sized cooking pot would do the trick. The genius part? These makeshift hearths could be moved anywhere on deck where warmth was desperately needed. But here's where pirates showed their practical smarts. These portable hearths pulled double duty like a Swiss Army knife for survival. One minute they're heating up a group of shivering sailors, the next they're cooking up a hot meal. Talk about efficiency that would make your grandmother proud. The trick was getting the coals just right. Too hot, and you'd risk turning your wooden ship into a floating bonfire. Too cool, and you might as well be warming your hands over a birthday candle. Pirates learned to master this balance through trial and error. Though I suspect the error part wasn't too forgiving on the high seas. Well, these hearths became lifesavers during those brutal passages through cold straits. Ship diaries from the era mention how crews would gather around these glowing pots like moths to a flame. The warmth didn't just keep fingers from freezing off, it kept spirits up when everything else felt hopeless. Makes sense, right? When you're facing weeks of bone-chilling wind and spray, having a reliable heat source changes everything. Pirates discovered that a warm crew was a productive crew. Sailors could actually function when they weren't spending all their energy just trying to stay warm. The real challenge was safety. Wooden ships and open flames go together about as well as a cat and a bathtub. Pirates had to position these hearths carefully, often using metal plates underneath and keeping buckets of sand nearby. One careless moment could send the whole vessel up in smoke. These portable hearths were essentially the great-great-grandfathers of modern space heaters. Same concept, just with more risk and a lot more character. Pirates would sometimes compete over who could build the most effective setup, turning survival into a friendly rivalry. And the weird part is how this simple solution worked so well that it became standard practice across pirate fleets. But even the cleverest heating tricks couldn't solve every problem. When the cold really set in, pirates needed something that could warm them from the inside out. Nothing beats a good drink when you're freezing your tail feathers off at sea, and pirates knew this better than anyone. While we might reach for hot chocolate or coffee today, these sea rogues had their own liquid solution, rum-based hot toddies that could warm you from your toes to your tricorn hat. Pirates weren't just randomly guzzling alcohol for fun, though, let's be honest, they probably enjoyed that part too. They genuinely believed that a well-timed hot toddy could save their lives during brutal cold snaps. And you know what? They weren't completely wrong, even if their understanding of the science was about as accurate as their treasure maps. The basic recipe was simple enough that even a one-leg cook could whip it up. Start. With rum, the cheaper and stronger, the better. Add hot water, which they'd heat over those portable hearths we talked about earlier. Then came the magic. Whatever spices they'd borrowed from their latest conquest, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, these weren't just flavor enhancers. Pirates thought these spices had medicinal properties that could ward off scurvy and keep them healthy. Whether that was true or not, these additions definitely made their drinks taste better than straight rum mixed with seawater, which was apparently a thing some desperate sailors tried. But here's where it gets interesting. While alcohol does create a temporary warming sensation by making your blood vessels expand, it's actually working against you in the long run. Your body loses heat faster when you're drunk, kind of like opening all the windows in your house while cranking up the thermostat. Pirates didn't know this, of course. They just knew that after a few sips, they felt warmer and cared a lot less about being cold. The real genius wasn't in the alcohol itself, but in the ritual. Sharing a hot toddy became a bonding experience that boosted morale during the worst weather. When you're stuck on a creaking wooden ship with the same smelly crew for months, a communal drink can work wonders for team spirit. Plus, the act of heating water and preparing the drinks kept their hands busy and their minds off the misery. It gave them something to look forward to when the temperature dropped and the wind picked up. Well, liquid warmth only goes so far when you're truly freezing. Smart pirates knew they needed more than just drinks to survive the harshest conditions. They needed fuel for their bodies that would keep burning long after the toddy wore off. When your teeth are chattering and the wind feels like it's cutting through your bones, nothing beats a steaming bowl of something hearty. Pirates figured this out fast. Their secret weapon against the bone-chilling cold wasn't just rum, though that certainly helped, but rather massive pots of bubbling hot stew that could warm you from the inside out. These weren't your grandmother's Sunday dinner creations, mind you. Pirate stews were thrown together masterpieces made from whatever they could get their hands on. Salt pork formed the base. That stuff lasted forever and packed serious flavor. Then came fish, caught fresh or pulled from their stores. Root vegetables like turnips, onions, and potatoes got tossed in whenever they raided coastal settlements. The beauty of stew cooking on a pirate ship? It killed two birds with one stone. First, you got a hot meal that actually filled your belly. Second, and here's where it gets clever, that bubbling pot acted like a giant heat source for anyone standing nearby. Pirates would crowd around the cooking area, warming their hands over the steam while waiting for dinner. But here's what most people don't realize about pirate cooking. These guys were surprisingly resourceful with spices. Every captured merchant vessel meant new seasonings for the pot. Pepper, nutmeg, cinnamon, whatever exotic spices they could pilfer. Not only did this make their slop taste better, but many believe certain spices helped fight off the cold weather sickness that plagued sailors. The actual cooking happened over those portable coal hearths we mentioned earlier. Smart pirates learned to keep a pot simmering almost constantly during cold weather voyages. Add ingredients throughout the day, keep it hot, and you've got an endless supply of warming fuel for your crew. Then there's the psychological boost nobody talks about. When you're exhausted from fighting freezing rain and your fingers are so cold you can barely grip the rigging, smelling hot food cooking below deck gives you something to look forward to. It's like having a warm hug waiting for you at the end of a brutal day. The really experienced pirates knew timing mattered. They'd serve the hottest, heartiest portions right before the coldest part of the night watch. This way, sailors stayed warmer longer while standing guard in the bitter wind. Speaking of staying warm through those long, freezing nights, food was just one piece of the puzzle. Smart pirates had another trick up their sleeves that involved getting creative with their living spaces themselves. Now, if you thought pirates were just tough guys who could handle any weather, well, you'd be half right. But even the saltiest sea dog knew that when those icy winds started howling through their quarters, it was time to get creative with some serious home improvement. Pirates became masters of what we'd call extreme weatherproofing today. They'd grab whatever they could find, tarps, canvas sails, even wooden planks from captured ships, and turn their basic cabins into proper fortresses against the wind. Think of it like wrapping your house in a giant winter coat, except the coat was made from stolen materials and held together with the sailor's ingenuity. The key wasn't just blocking the wind, though. These guys understood something that modern homeowners pay thousands to contractors for: air sealing. Every crack, every gap, every tiny opening that let cold air sneak in got plugged up. They'd stuff cloth into crevices, nail canvas over windows, and create what essentially became sealed survival pods. But here's where it gets interesting. Pirates didn't just randomly throw materials at the problem. They had a method to their madness. The sleeping quarters got priority treatment. Makes sense, right? A pirate who couldn't sleep because he was freezing all night wasn't much good for raiding the next day. These weatherproofing projects often became crew bonding experiences. Picture a bunch of hardened criminals huddled together, arguing over the best way to hang a tarp while their fingers went numb from the cold. Not exactly the image most people have of pirate life. What's really clever is how they maximized their heat sources once these spaces were sealed. Remember those heated salt pouches and portable hearths from earlier? Well, in a properly fortified cabin, one small heat source could warm an entire crew. The same fire that might barely take the chill off in an open space suddenly became a tropical vacation. The time and effort spent on these improvements paid off in ways beyond just comfort. Healthier crews meant fewer sick days, better morale, and more effective raids. Ship logs from that era show a direct connection between well-fortified quarters and successful voyages. Of course, all this sealing and fortifying created its own problems. The air could get pretty stale with a bunch of unwashed pirates breathing in a sealed space for hours. But that's where the real genius of pirate survival tactics came in. They learned to work together, even when things got uncomfortably close. And speaking of getting close for survival, when temperatures dropped to bone-chilling levels, pirates had one secret weapon that cost absolutely nothing: each other. Sounds romantic, right? Well, hold that thought. These hardened sea criminals discovered what survival experts teach today. Shared body heat could mean the difference between waking up and becoming a frozen deck ornament. Pirates would huddle together like a pack of shivering wolves, creating what they called heat circles below deck. But here's where it gets interesting. They didn't just randomly pile together like college kids at a slumber party. No, sir. Pirates had a system more organized than your local book club. The smartest crews developed rotation schedules that would make a military sergeant proud. Every 2 hours, the outer ring of sleepers would swap places with those lucky enough to be in the warm center. Think of it like a human rotisserie chicken. Everyone gets their turn being properly heated. Makes sense, right? Nobody wanted to be the poor soul stuck on the outside all night, slowly turning into a popsicle while their shipmates stayed toasty in the middle. Then there's the buddy system pirates used during watch duty. 2 men would share a single coat, standing back to back to share warmth while keeping lookout. They looked ridiculous, like some kind of 2-headed sea monster, but it worked. The captains weren't exempt from this either. Even the most fearsome pirate leaders would join the heat huddles when Mother Nature got particularly nasty. Pride doesn't keep you alive when your blood starts turning to slush. Well, here's the part that might surprise you. These tough-as-nails pirates often shared hammocks. Not because they were best friends, but because 2 bodies in one hammock generated twice the heat. Your grandmother's quilting circle had nothing on these guys when it came to practical warmth solutions. And the weird part is, this whole body heat strategy actually strengthened crew bonds. Nothing breaks down barriers, like literally, depending on your crewmates to keep you from freezing solid. Pirates who might normally be ready to stab each other over treasure suddenly became protective of their heat-sharing partners. The most successful pirate crews treated warmth like any other vital resource, something to be shared, rationed, and protected. They understood that a frozen pirate is a useless pirate, and useless pirates don't capture treasure. But even with all these clever body heat tricks, sometimes the cold was so brutal that pirates needed to get creative with materials they found around the ship. Now here's where things get really gross, but surprisingly effective. Pirates figured out that slathering animal fat and oils on their skin wasn't just desperate, it was genius. Well, genius if you could handle smelling like a fish market that had been sitting in the sun for 3 days. The fat created a waterproof barrier that locked in body heat. Think of it like nature's version of petroleum jelly, except it came from whatever sea creature they'd managed to catch that day. Whale blubber was the gold standard, but let's be honest, most pirates weren't exactly harpooning whales on a Tuesday afternoon. They made do with seal fat, fish oils, or even rendered pork fat from their food stores. But why did this work so well? Your skin loses heat through evaporation and direct contact with cold air. The fat layer stopped both problems at once. It's basically the same principle modern cold weather gear uses, except pirates were doing it 300 years before scientists figured out the chemistry. The application process wasn't pretty. Pirates would heat the fat until it became liquid, then rub it all over exposed skin. Faces, hands, necks. Some even soaked their clothing in the stuff. Imagine walking around in a jacket that's been dunked in melted lard. Not exactly what you'd call fashionable, but when you're facing hypothermia, vanity takes a back seat to survival. Here's the weird part. It actually worked better than you'd expect. One pirate journal from 1723 mentions crew members staying warm for up to 8 hours after a single application. That's more effective than some modern hand warmers. The downside, well, everything. You'd attract every seagull within 50 miles. The smell could knock a man overboard. And good luck getting close enough to anyone for a friendly conversation. Pirates using this method probably had to sleep alone on deck, which kind of defeated the whole body heat sharing strategy from earlier. Then there's the maintenance factor. Salt spray would wash it off, so they'd need to reapply constantly. Some crews designated specific times for greasing up, like it was part of their daily routine. Pass the hardtack, check the sails, cover yourself in fish oil. just another day at the office. Despite the obvious drawbacks, this method saved lives. When you're choosing between dignity and frostbite, most people pick dignity. Pirates, they picked survival every single time. The really clever ones learned to mix different fats for better consistency. A little whale oil for waterproofing, some bear fat for staying power, maybe a dash of seal oil for that special aroma that said, "I'm definitely not someone you want to mess with."